shall we go down the list quickly of the neutralizers?
Yes, we shall.
That being the first one that I just told you, above and beyond the list, because this is the main principle behind the neutralizers, is to realize the illusion and the lies behind the negative beliefs. Because as we said in the beginning, the idea is that the negative beliefs have to work very hard to convince you that you're unworthy, because you know that you are worthy. And therefore, this is all smoke and mirrors. And by demonstrating the idea of the transition from a simple recognition to a complex and quote-unquote scary archetypal presentation in your mythology, you see how the negative beliefs have to work to create illusions when all they really are just standing behind the curtain, pushing the levers, going, hope they believe this one. This is my best trick yet. I am Oz the great and powerful. You understand. And so let's look behind the curtain.
Yes, and these are negativity neutralizers. The first being remembering that negative feelings are generated by negative beliefs.
When you understand that that's the succession, that you have to have the belief first in order to have any feeling at all, because you have to have a definition in order to know what you're feeling about, then as soon as you have a negative feeling or a feeling that's uncomfortable for you, own it. Don't try to get rid of it. Don't try to ignore it. Own it. You have to acknowledge that it's there, because you can't change what you don't own. But realize that as soon as you have the feeling, you can use the feeling. Remember that the feeling has to come from a definition first. So once you feel the feeling, that can be your first aha. If I'm feeling this, there has to be a definition generating it. Let's find out what it is. What I have to believe is true in order to feel the way I do. And that can help you unlock from the fear and go into curiosity and discovery to find out what that negative belief actually is. And once you identify it, it will automatically appear illogical and nonsensical, and you realize that you simply bought into it somewhere along the way, your parents, your society, your friends, your schooling, and you will realize that it's baggage that doesn't belong to you, and you can drop it. Go ahead.
You can neutralize negative beliefs by remembering that negative beliefs are only beliefs, and they're not actually true.
Everything is just a belief in terms of your physical reality experience. The only things that are absolutes are the 5 laws that we have often talked about. Everything else is just a combination of those laws and an experience of the idea of polarity projections from belief systems as a physical being, because that's what you're made of. You're really made of. Your physical mind is just made of belief systems. That's all it is. They're just filters that allow you to experience the idea of yourself as a projection into physical reality. But physical reality is just a dream. In reality, you are all right now still in spirit. You're just dreaming that you're not. That's it. You never leave spirit. It's your natural state. It's what you are. So you are now imposing upon your spirit, upon your consciousness, the dream that you are having a physical reality. And that's all it is. But you're still in spirit right now. So let's wake up and remember that.
Another neutralizer is remembering that beliefs can always be changed.
A belief inherently is changeable when you believe that it is. So this is the skeleton key that unlocks you from any belief, is no matter how hard a negative belief may work to convince you to buy into it, if you just give yourself an opportunity to always take a pause and remember that it is just a belief, then you will always know you always have the key to change it if you truly prefer to. That's the skeleton key that unlocks you from any belief, is just remembering that it is nothing but a belief.
Remembering that all situations are fundamentally neutral.
And again, notice how all of or most of these neutralizers have to do with just remembering these ideas. That's all. And again, remember that the negative belief is going to do its darndest to get you to forget, to get you to not realize that there are such concepts. Remember, we said it will paint these things as if it's something to not pay attention to. So in a fact, the idea of just remembering some of these ideas can, in many cases, be enough to neutralize them just because you broke through the forgetfulness the negative belief was intending to impose upon your consciousness. Just remembering can eradicate many of these beliefs, just remembering these things. And that will put you back into a state of neutrality, which, as we have said, is actually slightly bent always in the positive direction, because neutrality is a state in which you are free to choose, and that's a positive state. So, in a sense, you could say that creation is actually just slightly more positive than negative, because there is a middle state of neutrality that allows you more ease of choosing the positive. And if you just drift in neutrality, even if you just do that, the current of creation will eventually bend you in the positive direction if you do nothing else but just go with the flow. That's a powerful one, isn't it? All right.
Remember that your existence and your worth are more fundamental than any belief.
Beliefs are just the creation of the idea of the physical mind. Your existence is far more fundamental. That, in some senses, should be obvious. And if you exist, that means you have to be worthy, because creation doesn't make mistakes. And if you exist, then that means existence needs you to exist, or existence wouldn't be complete. So you are that worthy, because, again, the things that existence didn't need don't exist. So your worth and your existence are far more fundamental than any belief. And if you just go back to that core remembrance, then the belief will be seen as a secondary level illusion and not a true fundamental truth or reality.
Remember that negative beliefs make positive beliefs easier to see by contrast.
You can use the idea of negativity in a positive way. That's basically what this means. So you're not invalidating the negative belief, but turning it back on itself and saying, well, thank you, negative belief, for being so dark, because by being so dark, you actually allow it to be much easier to see the little light in the distance, which, if things were brighter, I might not have noticed. So in the vastness and empty void of space, a single tiny spark of light is much easier to see because of all the blackness. So you can use the negativity to your advantage and turn its trick around on itself by saying, thank you for showing me the contrast, because many times it's a lot easier for many of you to simply understand what it is you do prefer by being shown an example very clearly of what you don't prefer by contrast. Then you know what direction to go in more easily.
Another neutralizer is that you can remember that negative beliefs are your creation, and that you're always in control, you're always empowered, and even if you're using your power to make it seem like you're out of control.
That's again the thing to understand about the nature of existence and your existence as well, is that there can be no such thing as an actual disconnection from Source. But Source supports you so unconditionally in your choices that you can choose to pretend that you are disconnected. But the paradox is the only way you can actually have an experience of disconnection is to use your connection to create it. So if you remember that you're always empowered, then you will realize and remember that the only way you could possibly have an experience of disempowerment is if you're using your power to create that experience of disempowerment. And once you remember that it's simply not actually possible to be disempowered, again, you will neutralize the negative belief's insistence on your lack of power.
Another neutralizer is if you remember that positive beliefs will never use negative reinforcement, but that negative beliefs will always use positive reinforcement because they are deceptive by design.
Exactly. So always pay attention when they are leading you down the so-called primrose path and painting a rosy picture of something that you know is actually negative, because they have to work very hard to make it seem positive in order for you to follow it. But you can recognize that they are being deceitful because that's their nature to be so, in order to perpetuate themselves, because you know the truth about yourselves, and they have to lie to you to get you to buy into what they're saying by pretending that they know better, by pretending they have your best interests at heart, and then coloring things to make it look like that's the path to take, when really, if you just stood back and looked at what they were doing, you would realize that it's just a path of rocks and thorns that they're convincing you to step on.
Another thing that you can do is you can remember the yin-yang concept, that no matter how dark things may seem, you always have the ability to reach the light.
Within the idea of the polarity in existence, there is always an opportunity, just as in the yin-yang symbol, to recognize that on the dark side, there is always a spot of white. And on the dark side, there always is that, and on the white side, always a spot of dark. So that you know the doorways exist in both directions, and you can always choose. No matter how dark it may seem, you will always know there is a doorway to the light. Always. But at the same time, knowing that no matter how light it seems, you always have the power to choose the dark. This again brings you back into balance, brings you back into the center point where you can neutralize everything and realize that all choices are just equally valid, and then choose what you prefer with a clear conscience and from a state of balance. So remember that symbol.
Another method is to remember to be okay with the process of discovering what your negative beliefs are, so that you can let go of them.
Many people, again, are convinced by the negative belief that they should be absolutely perfectly spiritual beings by now. Why do these things keep happening to me? What's wrong with me? I should be far beyond this at this particular point. But you see, the process is the point. You will transition at some point from the idea of letting go of negative beliefs to something else. But it will always be a process, so be okay with process, because process is the point of having a physical life. Because you cannot change without the idea of process. In a timeless state, there's no change. Only by creating the illusion of space and time can you go through the idea of discovering yourself from a new point of view. So be happy with the process, love the process, be passionate about discovering through the process, because process is the equivalent of life. You're living a life that is by nature a process of discovery. That's what it's all about. The journey is the destination, the process is the point. So live in the process, live in the now with the process, and it will serve you in positive ways. Let it be okay to go through those processes. The difference will come in this way. At some point, when you are finally willing to investigate all the negative beliefs, bring them to conscious light, and let them go, the process of letting things go will continue, but the way the process then expresses itself is it changes from letting go of negative beliefs to letting go of things that are simply no longer relevant for you in life. They may be positive things, but eventually you will streamline yourself, streamline yourself, streamline yourself by letting go of even positive things that simply are no longer relevant for the being you now know and prefer yourself to be. So the process won't stop even when you let go of all the negative ideas. So please don't turn the process into another negative idea, because it isn't. Or doesn't have to be.
Another neutralizer is remember that negative beliefs belong to someone else, and you don't have to carry them.
Yes. As we said, things that are truly out of alignment with who you are don't belong to you. You most likely picked them up along the way. But they are baggage that belong to other people that you've simply been convinced that you have to carry. But because it belongs to other people, that's why it's so heavy. That's why it weighs you down. The beliefs that are true and in alignment for you weigh nothing. It feels effortless. You feel light as a feather. When you start to feel weighed down, that can be one of the clues you're carrying something that doesn't belong to you. So investigate it. Drop the baggage. As we have said, do not steal other people's beliefs and be a belief thief. You don't want to steal other people's beliefs. Drop them and move on and lighten your load. Remember that the first step to enlightenment is to lighten up on yourself and lighten your load.
Remember that you're never alone and you always have help.
You may always be capable of experiencing solitude in a positive way, but you are never, ever, 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 ever actually, truly alone. You cannot be, because you are connected to everything. You are everything, expressing itself as everything, expressing itself as every aspect of itself. And thus you are all the reflections, and they are you. You are never alone. You have help, you have guides, you have friends, you have family on many different levels, and connections more than you can imagine from this perspective. You can always create the experience of solitude, and that solitude will always be respected to give you the space you need to function as the individual that you are. But you are never, ever, ever alone. And the second that anyone knows that assistance is required, assistance is always given. You are constantly, in fact, being bombarded with all the assistance we, your guides, and many other beings and source can possibly give. If you feel that the assistance isn't there, it's not because it's not being given, it's because you are blocking the reception by negative beliefs and buying into them. So as soon as you let go, you will suddenly realize, and in fact almost be blinded with the assistance that is always flowing your way without let up of any kind. So tap into that river and let it flow through you, because it's always coming. It cannot stop.
Remember that you're always loved and supported, no matter what.
Again, this goes to your worthiness. If you were not worthy, you wouldn't exist. So if you exist, you're worthy. And the idea is, therefore, you have absolute right to all the energy, all the support, all the love, as you call it, of all that is, because that is the energy of existence itself. And if you are part of existence, then it is your nature to experience the ideas you translate in your reality as unconditional love and support. It's your nature that you're experiencing when you experience those energies. It's the nature of existence itself translating in physical terms that you call that feeling of unconditional love and unconditional support. It's your nature.
Remember to forgive yourself and others.
Forgiveness is exceedingly powerful as a tool. Here's exactly vibrationally why. Forgiveness is a state of being that can actually mitigate the effects of the consequences of a negative act. You have, many of you at least, heard of the idea that when you die, many people experience what is called life review. Yes? And in that life review experience, it has been reported that what happens, because there are no longer the same barriers between you and another, that you will suddenly start to experience in that life review not only the things that happened visually, but you will actually experience the consequences of anything you chose to do and the way in which others may have experienced them based on your intentions, as if you're experiencing the consequences from their point of view. You understand? So if you have in any way, shape, or form intentionally caused hurt or harm to someone, in the life review, you will feel exactly what they felt when you did that, as if you were them. Forgiveness of yourself forgiveness from others, forgiveness to others, is actually a vibrational state that will actually mitigate the effect of the consequence of a negatively intentioned act. So the more forgiveness you can create for yourselves, the more you can forgive others, the more you are evening the playing field, and the less need there is for you to experience the idea of the negative energy that was initially created by a negative act. It's as simple as that. It is a mitigation cancellation system. That's what forgiveness is as an energy. It's bringing everything back to zero.
Another neutralizing method is to remember that you can choose what you prefer without invalidating what you don't prefer.
The only reason you would choose to invalidate something you don't prefer is if you have a belief that it is somehow more powerful than you are at deciding what you prefer. Because if you have to invalidate it, then you're saying you have to have extra protection. You have to somehow shun it and push it away. But there's nowhere to push anything to. Imagine that because everything is actually here and now, that the walls of existence are right here. And if there's a big spring on the wall and you push against that spring, the only thing you're doing is building up energy in that spring by denying it and pushing it away. So at some point, that energy is going to build up so much, so powerfully, that it's going to pop back at you. It has no choice because it has nowhere to go. This is what invalidation does. But if you simply validate everything, then the springs just sit there. And you go, well, okay, there's this negative spring and there's this positive spring and they're just sitting there and I'm not going to give you undue energy. And I'm just going to choose what I prefer. This is what I prefer. That's it. There's no charge on it. This is simply a recognition of what I prefer. That's it. And then you act in that direction. And that's all there is to it. Invalidation charges the thing you don't prefer because it's a negative energy. So if you don't prefer a negative thing, why would you feed it more negative energy? By invalidating it. You're just feeding it, and when you feed something, it'll grow. Don't feed it.
Be willing to be honest with yourself about your beliefs.
Absolutely. In your investigation, do not succumb to the convincing of the negative belief that makes you go into denial that the negative beliefs are there. They're always going to be there for a while. And your excitement in following it will reveal to you any negative beliefs that may be remaining within your personality structure. And that's all right. Just discover them. Don't go into denial about it. If you go into the idea again that, well, I'm supposed to be this perfect spiritual being that has absolutely no negative beliefs, well, then that's a negative belief. Again, it's the negative belief convincing you that you're perfect so you don't have to look at things. But you are perfect anyway. You're perfect as you are. Whatever version of you are at the moment is absolutely a perfect version of what you are at the moment. In the next moment, you may be different, but you will just be a different, perfect version of that. So you're always already perfect, even though you will always constantly change.
Another important thing to remember is don't let fear stop your momentum. If you're going to be afraid anyway, then go ahead and push through it and do what you love doing regardless.
This is just a logical argument. If you're going to be afraid, why not be afraid while you're doing what you love instead of sitting around not doing anything and being afraid? It's as simple as that. You might as well, if you're going to be afraid, be doing something you love to do while you're being afraid. And as soon as you actually start moving in the direction of what you love to do, you will find that you'll be less afraid. Very simple self-canceling mechanism.
Yeah, and if you find that you are experiencing fear, push through the fear. Even though it'll get louder and stronger, that only means it's reaching its breaking point, and eventually it will dissolve.
As we said, negative beliefs have to work very hard to get your attention, to turn your face away from the truth that you're absolutely worthy. So as soon as you start moving in the positive direction, they're going to start yelling as loud as they can. They're going to start banging on drums. They're going to have a 76-piece orchestra trying to get your attention so that you will come back in that direction. So the louder it gets, the stronger the fear feels, should tell you you're really close to crossing the threshold and letting it go, or it wouldn't have to work so hard to get your attention.
And don't forget that if you're the creator of the negative belief, then you are more powerful than the negative belief.
You're the one that created it. No matter though it may convince you that it has power over you, it always knows that you are the creator of the negative belief. And of course, if you realize that, then the negative belief is neutralized. So it will do everything in its power to convince you that you are not as powerful as it is. But if you created it, you have to be more powerful than it is.
Remember, positive beliefs allow you to feel light and free. It's negative beliefs that make you feel tired and heavy.
And again, we come back to the idea of the loophole that while you can lighten your load as you go, if for some reason you are holding on and holding on and holding on and holding on and getting tireder and tireder, more exhausted, and wondering why you have absolutely no joie de vivre, then the idea can be used as a turnaround to recognize that eventually, if you maintain any degree of desire to go in the positive direction, that you will one day become so sick and tired of being sick and tired that you will finally let all of that negativity go. Now, you don't have to do that. You don't have to wait that long. But at least you know that someday, if you're that sick and tired, you might finally be willing to let go of the thing that's actually making you sick and tired.
And here's an interesting one. Drop what your ego wants.
Yes. Know the difference between what you prefer and what your ego is telling you you want. Because more often than not, what the ego wants is what the negative ego is attempting to convince you of that you need, and to distract you from what really would serve you, what would really be representative of what you need, what would really be representative of your joy. It will convince you that you must want this and you must want that in order to be happy. And again, all it's doing in many cases is leading you down a primrose path.
Let go of all of your assumptions and go to zero.
Yes, and we will continue because this will culminate in the final one.
Which is, don't resist change, go with the flow.
And
remember the famous quote.
Pay attention.
It's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know that just isn't so.
Assumptions. Negative beliefs will convince you that you know what you're talking about when you don't. So always allow yourself to know that many different kinds of statements that may sound like facts may only be assumptions that are reinforced by negative beliefs to convince you that you know what you're talking about and that you know better than what someone else may be attempting to tell you that could help you. So you will become the ultimate authority. I know it all. You can't tell me anything new. But there's the trap. It's not so much that you get into trouble with what you don't know. It's what you know that just isn't so, because you've been convinced that it's true and it may not be. So always look for the things that come out of your mouth and pay attention to whether they are just assumptions or true statements of your being. Because negative beliefs will make assumptions appear to be facts, and they're nothing again but smoke and mirrors. Now again, these are just a few of the ideas, both negative and positive. It is up to your own imagination to provide whatever may work for you. But the more you allow yourself to look at this list and study this list, the more it will rub off on you the way in which negative beliefs work. You will start to really see behind the curtain, understand the illusions and the tricks, and then start to catch them in the act. And then realize how empowered you are and then you can move in the direction that you prefer. Nania, did you wish to add anything to this?
I think just that if you find yourself getting stuck in a negative belief, remember to look at this list and work with these
All right.
ideas.
Because you really are not stuck. That's just a negative belief idea. Thank you. In return for allowing us to share this idea with you, we now ask in what way may we be of continued service in our dialogues